guys, welcome back to Strings and Strokes. So in today's video, I'm going to cover how to plan a lesson in an international school or in an international setting. National setting or India की setting के हिसाब से नहीं बता सकती because I have never planned a lesson back in India. I worked there for 4 years in different schools in Gurgaon. I worked in 3 schools in Gurgaon, and after working for 4 years in India, I moved to UAE and I worked several years in Dubai. So I have worked in a British curriculum and an IB curriculum. The lesson plan that I'm going to share and talk about today can fit in both curriculums. However, because I have been recently teaching in an IB curriculum, so it's going to have some IB links in there as well. However, if you want to still pursue looking at the lesson plan and looking at the details of the plan, you're most welcome because it can fit in any international setting. So I will let you know while I'm talking you through the lesson plan. But please consider that I've tried to keep it as concise and as crisp as possible. However, there were things that I had to explain. तो वीडियो थोड़ी सी लंबी हो गई है. It is actually longer video than usual. So let's get this video started. And if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment section below. I have worked in about 4 schools within UAE, and the lesson plan format looks similar to this one. There could be minor changes here and there, but then it looks like this one. This is the particular primary school lesson plan, the PYP lesson plan as per the IB curriculum standards. But the MYP one also looks similar. However, it's more detailed. I can take you through that one as well in another video. So let's quickly look at this one. Few basic details like teacher's name, the grade, the lesson that you're teaching, the date of the lesson, and the lesson that you're teaching, for example, period 1, period 2, or that particular class. Then you have to mention the number of students that are in the class, the total number of students, then the boys and the girls, any SEN students that you have which are special education needs, if they are wave 1, wave 2, and wave 3, depending on the severity of their condition, you mention that, and the list is already given to you from the school itself. So that should be easy for you to mention. And the number is supposed to be mentioned because you're going to be mentioning what measures do you take to cater to their particular need within the lesson plan. This is a day's lesson plan, okay? And this is generally made regularly by a few teachers. I don't make it regularly. I only make it whenever I have somebody visiting my lesson for the observation, and that is what the schools ask as well, unless you're a teacher who's a very proactive teacher and who wants to make the lesson plan every time, completely your choice. But for me, I make it only when somebody particularly visits my class. We have a special provision here for Emirati students as well, so we put the names of the Emirati students because that is mandate from the government, what special measures. You don't need to, however, take the special measures for the Emirati students if they fall in the category of the usual learners. But if there's something special about that particular person, then you need to take the special measures. And from the focus or point of the UAE government, they want to be able to focus on the Emirati students because it's their country and their population is minimum. So they want that Emirati gets a bit more focus. Okay, so that's there. Then as per the IB PYP standards, you have to mention the central idea. The list of central ideas given as per the subjects already there on the internet. Loads of central ideas are available. If there's something that you want to check on the international baccalaureate, that's available. This section that's there you might not see in the British curriculum, but you will see other parts. For example, different schools following different strategies like big idea, central idea, focus of the lesson, the learning objective, etc., etc. So this would be similar, but different terminology being used here. Then we've got lines of inquiry. I'm particularly teaching a lesson on the marine life where I'm collaborating with the other subject teachers. So this is what my lines of inquiry looks like. What all makes the marine life? What is the impact of humans on marine life is my lines of inquiry, because students will be able to focus on this while initiating the group discussions within the classroom. So this is what I'm going to lead my inquiry on. That means the line of inquiry. We'll be basing our questions, critical thinking, everything on the lines of inquiry. Then we're looking at ATL skills, which is the attributes to learning commonly used in the IB curriculum. So particularly there are 6-7 attributes, but I'm focusing on 3 at the moment: research, thinking, and self-management. Self-management is basically where students are coming readily prepared for the lesson. They've got all the resources that they need to be able to do the lesson. Thinking skills is the critical thinking and then questioning, and how are they leading, what are the thinking patterns, how are they answering the questions, and how kind of of their discussion is happening in the classroom. So for me to just reflect on that, and then researching, because obviously we're looking at some inquiry. So students should be researching on a few aspects of marine life. Then I am looking at the learning outcomes. What is the expectation of my lesson? Out of which I divided further in the three categories: all, most, and some. Here, it's the basic expectation from any classroom in any curriculum that your students should be able to achieve something at the end of the lesson. So, what all of my students, what is the bare minimum requirement of the achievement of the lesson is all. Will all students will be able to draw a range of sea creatures from the Arabian Gulf marine life. I've particularly linked it with the Arabian Gulf because this is the region we are in, and it's always great to link it to your local environment first, then go broader on the international environment, or go broader around the world. But this is what I have particularly linked it to. Then most will be able to draw a range of sea creatures from the Arabian Gulf marine life to create an underwater scene. So I have made it a little bit more detailed because only most of the students will be able to reach this step. However, all will be able to do this, and then only a few, or some as I should say, will be able to draw a range of sea creatures from Arabian Gulf marine life to create an underwater scene using colors and patterns. So that's a little bit more detailed, all which can be practically achieved, which my students already do. And this is a bit of differentiation by the learning outcomes, which is naturally achieved within the lesson. So I have just made it visible. Then you always focus on the prior learning before you start the lesson. There's every time a student always knows something about the topic. So how are you addressing that prior learning? So your prior learning is basically your point A of the lesson. Students have been working on the unit Sharing the Planet. In their unit of inquiry, students have been introduced the different habitats. So students already know whether marine life exists and what all kind of marine life exists, etc., etc. So that's their start point. And this is a basic lesson plan that I'm showing you. You can obviously tweak it. You can obviously tweak it further, use it further as per your requirement and your classroom requirements. Then comes the success criteria, where I divide it further as per the understanding, the conceptual and the skill based. Okay, so the conceptual one is students can identify different species in the Arabian Gulf marine life, and then the students can observe the colors, shapes, forms, and patterns of the different sea creatures. So they should be able to talk about it. So in my learning outcome, it's based on drawing at the moment, but it can also be based on the concept. For example, all my students are able to talk about, all my students are able to identify, for example, different species, and then most could be all my students are able to discuss. Then some could be that some of my students are able to talk about, and then some and then a very few are able to distinguish between. Based on the Bloom's taxonomy, we always focus on the higher order thinking as we go further to make it more challenging for the students. So let's come back to the success criteria. I already told you how the understanding part of it is important here, and then the art skills. I'm sorry, I can't cut it short. I see that the video size is increasing, but it's essential for me to cover all these things because it is important in a lesson. Okay, so let's look at the art skills. You could be looking at math skills. You could be looking at science skills, English skills, literacy skills, numeracy skills, depending on whatever you teach in the classroom, and your understanding could be based on that too. So for example, you could look at any other skills depending on your subject. For me, it's art, so I'm going to look at drawing neatly using a pencil, draw vertically using most of the space, coloring neatly. So basically because it's only year 2 lesson, I'm only focusing on how they use their space, how they color neatly, what is their gross motor skill, what is their fine motor skill, and basically all of that. They're able to observe the colors, etc., etc. And then I also keep an extension ready. Now extension could be an extension or a challenge, just to cater to the students who are now done with the task while everybody else is still on the task. For example, you have a class full of 20 students, out of which 25 are still on the task that you've given them. They are still drawing and coloring, but there are 5 who are done, and those who are already done, coloring neatly, drawing neatly, and everything else that you asked for. So what are you going to ask them? You have to keep something ready for them to be engaging them, because that can be a challenge for you. You don't know what to do with the students who are done. So you have to have this in your planning, and this is a basic expectation within UA as well. So add an extension. For example, mine is add a background and CV to make it a scene. So yeah, if they're done with the basic drawings, I'm going to ask them to make a background. For example, you could prepare 2 worksheets if you're teaching literacy or numeracy. If you're done with the worksheet number 1, go on a different level, a higher level. Do another worksheet. So that the higher order students who are done with their task are also very well engaged. Again, now the resources you're using: videos, websites, tech tools, PPT, art material like paper, bold felt pens, and basic stationery. So be as specific as you can here. I've just given you examples. So whatever resources you're using within the lesson, just be more specific. Now here comes my learning engagement. So we do a three-part lesson here where there's a starter, there's a main activity, and there's a plenary. Starter is basically how you start the lesson, how you take the prior learning into consideration, and lead a lesson to start with a discussion, be it a game, be it a quiz, be it a little peer discussion or a group discussion, or just a bit of brainstorming, making a mind map, etc., etc. My starter for this lesson is we will have a quick glance at the sea creature which are found in the Arabian Gulf, followed by the discussion about the composition of marine life and how have humans impacted it. So for the starter, for me particularly, I had a big image on the display where there was a marine life and of the effects of had polybags at the coast, etc. So that basically provided a stimulus for my students to discuss this further, and I had a few questions there happening after the discussion of the questions and the images that we had. We had a discussion on how the marine life has been impacted by humans, and students had come up with fantastic answers which led to further discussion and the further discussion. But it was a great activity. Then we have a main activity to draw a range of sea creatures from Arabian Gulf marine life. Students will be supported throughout the task. If they have any troubles, they will be supported by demonstrating the task in the form of video and steps. So I give a demonstration, either role model the task, gather them around my table, which was not possible during the COVID time. So I used to make the videos for the students to look at. You could use a demonstration video which is already available on YouTube, or make your own, or you could give them the steps. So what will the teacher do in the lesson? The teacher will guide the SEN students and break tasks into smaller chunks. Teacher will talk to students and walk around the classroom supporting the children, asking questions and planning the next steps. Ask probing questions, basically critical thinking related questions. What will the students do? Students will watch the demonstration to be able to draw the sea creature. Students will refer to the success criteria to ensure their success and the next steps. Now, I don't mind taking you through the presentation that I made and while I was taking this lesson, so I can take you through that. It's a basic presentation, and I will share that presentation just now that you can see on the screen what it looks like. And then I lead this further by differentiation. I sometimes differentiate my lesson, content, process, and outcome based on these three factors, sometimes even more in an MYP classroom. So what is a differentiation? Differentiation is simply how are you supporting all your learners? How are you supporting the ones who cannot do the task? How are you supporting the ones who can quickly do the task? And how are you supporting or challenging the students who can do the task even before you've explained them the task? So basically, how are you supporting all the learners? All the students sitting in front of you in that classroom are not the same ability. Some of them would need more support, some of them would ask for more help, some of them would be very independent, and some of them would teach the others. They are that level. Some of them would challenge you as a teacher. So how are you trying to support all the learners within that classroom? So I've got a few things listed here, but you can make it as personalized as possible by naming all your students. For example, you are talking about student A and student B who has the lower ability as per your observation, and how are you supporting them? So let me show you what I have written here. Mixed ability groups. So I have made my seating arrangement as mixed ability groups to support lower ability students, and for higher ability students to solidify their learning by supporting their classmates' understanding. So you've made 5 students sat together, and a few of them are lower ability, and then mixed middle achievers, and then higher achievers, and they can all collaborate and do the task by supporting each other, by looking at each other, and that really helps. If you're just going to section all the weaker students together and the mid ability together and the higher ones together, then I mean it would work for some of you, but particularly not for me. I feel that they learn a lot by looking at each other, so I would just like to motivate them. However, if you think you're doing a maths or a science, and if you think you want to give the higher task to the one sitting together so that the others don't feel that why have I got a different worksheet, etc., it's completely your choice and your call. How do you like to support your students the best without having to make them feel discriminated? Further, I have lower ability students can be asked simpler lower order questions. For example, what questions, what is this, what is that. Then lower ability students can use the image examples provided and select simpler images to draw. Then they can be given dashed lines to trace over if needed. Then they can be given one-on-one support from the teacher if needed. Okay. Then mixed ability, the middle ability students will obviously be following the common instructions which are given through the PPT. Higher ability students can be asked more conceptual, high order questions like how does it happen? Why do you think it is happening? More conceptual question. And then if you compare this thing with that thing, how do you think it's going to work? Higher ability students will find the artist information more independently. Obviously, they can be independent learners in your classroom and can also support the lower achievers and the middle achievers. Higher ability students will draw freehand and independently. Higher ability students can choose more complicated images or find their own images from the internet. Students can also use the extension opportunity to strengthen their skill. So that's all that is achieved. And I can further mention the student's name in the brackets depending on whatever class I'm teaching, because I teach multiple classes and it's not only one class that I teach. Just like any other class teachers, I'm a specialist. So if you're a music teacher, art teacher, dance teacher, computers, or etc., PE teacher, then it's easier for you to do it like this. And then in the bracket, you can write the student's name against each of the ability. And if you're a class teacher, then you can obviously name the students and cater to that, because you already know your students so well that you see them every day. For me, I see them only once a week. So I have to obviously look at the class lists and do my seating plan and make annotations and notes for what I'm planning for them, to know them more, to personalize the learning a little bit more. Okay, I'm coming to AFL, which is formatives. Which is assessment for learning, questioning, levels of questions, direct questions related to the concept, what all sea creatures can we draw, simple as that. Discuss all shapes, sizes and colors in the marine life. Let them observe with the help of images and any probing questions that you have, any imagery that you have according to your subject. Then how can we make our work neater? Ask them to challenge them to think about how can they make things better as per your subject level. What all can we include to make our drawings look more realistic? So here I'm going to let them observe the images of cartoonish drawing versus the realistic drawings, and what is the difference. For example, there would be outline in one, no outlines in one, light and shadows in one, no light and shadows in one, 2D, 3D, etc., etc. Can we show any impact of human on the marine life in our underwater scenes, and how can they show that effect? Can they draw a poly bag lying next to the beach? Can they draw a waste bottle, or can they draw anything else that they have seen in their real life? So they will reflect and they will do a lot of thinking there, and then they will come up with their own artworks. Then you will stop and check, look at the success criteria on board to say where they are and identify the next steps. I'm going to show you this on the screen. I'm showing you currently basically. And you can see what my success criteria looks like. Teacher observations, what will the teacher be looking in that lesson? Students are constantly on task, is my job, so I'm going to look for that. Have the students been using success criteria to meet the task requirements to the highest level? Are all the students engaged, equally engaged? Very, very important. Do they understand the task? Teacher to support the students if they are struggling with anything. So these are my observations. Let's go further. Inclusion, support and challenge. How am I supporting my students who need support? Is by step-by-step drawing displayed, video demonstrations, one-on-one role modeling of the task, dashed lines to the SEN students if they are struggling to draw independently. However, it's not always important that my SEN student, if that person is SEN, in maths or science or literacy, would be SEN and art as well. It could be different for different subjects. That particular student, which is a special education needs student for any other subject, would be can be basically a star of the show in my subject. So could be very good at drawing, and I will not need to do all these things for them. I will not have to scaffold the lesson for them. So that completely depends on the student. Then challenge, students will add a background and CV to make it look like a scene. Plenary is what I am doing to conclude the lesson, to sum up the lesson, to make sure that I concluded, and make the learning visible at the end of the lesson, more visible, and just sum it up. So a plenary is that. An underwater video to relax and observe the colors for the students, creatures and elements in the sea, reflecting on how does it make you feel. So that's what my conclusion would be. I could give the exit slips. I could ask the students to write what went well and even better ifs. I could ask the students to just write what they learned today. There could be 100 other ways to know how to do the plenaries. Then the key questions that I'm using for my assessments of learning is what is marine life? Can you name some sea creatures found in Arabian Gulf? What all sea creatures can be draw, discuss all shapes, sizes and colors in the marine life? How can we make our artwork neater? What all material could be used to create our scenes? What all can we include to make our drawings look more realistic? Can we show any impact of human on marine life in the underwater scenes, and how? I know this is a bit repetitive. However, it is basically me summing up all the key questions that I've asked and that I would like to ask to let them think further. So this is it at the end of the lesson. And I hope you really liked this video. It was useful and informative. If so, then please make sure that you subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so that you can continuously receive updates from us. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section so that I can answer them. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye and have a great day.